Very good morning to all of you listening, and certainly everybody who showed up to talk today. Today we have, in some ways, an open forum. I certainly would like to discuss the service which was given by me, um,
Oh, hi.
discussing. Hello, JC. Discussing the ways that essentially creating art is a metaphor for creating society.
Mhm.
So Sharon, you're muted right now, but Sharon wanted to go first. There you go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Michael, first of all, I wanted to say I enjoyed the music very much.
Oh, well, thank you.
hmm Secondly, I appreciate how you weave the ancient with the modern,
Oh,
plus the multicultural antidotes, which illustrate the wisdom of all past and present, as well as of all peoples.
hmm.
The fact that it takes many to produce anything, as you say, like a stage production, it also takes many to create a family, a village, a nation, or the world to coexist. And if I understood correctly, it is the faithfulness of the many that brings fruition to any endeavor. Would that
I
be accurate?
oh, not only would it be accurate, I wish I'd hired you to write the sermon for me. Yeah,
That was a very good summary,
yeah.
Sharon. Would
If
you send
it,
that to me, please, so I can
yeah,
write that up?
if that's what you got, I feel like a rock star then. you know.
That about
But
sums it up.
But no, I remember being I was a music teacher in Phoenix, Arizona, and one of my students, one of my best students, she was the daughter of a African immigrant raised in France, and an American woman, and she talked about her father being raised in Africa and how he was late to school one day, so his teacher walked him home, in order to tell on him, and his parents weren't home, so he left him with the neighbor who made him do yard work and informed the neighbor of the bad child that he'd been, and all of this reminded me of that adage that Hillary Clinton talked about with it takes a village to raise a child, right?
It
That
does.
African proverb. um and here it was, like, spelled out so perfectly in this story that the whole community was responsible for the raising of this child, especially if the child was bad. And I think that is absolutely something that the West can do a better job of embracing, or maybe re-embracing, because
Re-embracing.
yeah, because we don't have that sense of community. Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
Well, can I reinforce how that um, was illustrated in my own life?
Hmm.
Because I needed help with children,
Hmm.
and the school did not help.
Hmm.
The social services that I thought would help did not. And everywhere I turned, I was told their hands were tied. It was limited. Oh, the police didn't help. So it was extremely frustrating for me to find any help.
Hmm. Yeah.
And after what I would say some tragedy, um, the I found this congregation, and they helped me emotionally, but they could not help with the real problem.
Right.
So that reinforces what you just said.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. We're with all the reinforcing we're doing, we're building a great building here.
Mm.
Um, yeah. Well, thank you, Sharon. That actually, that's very heartening. I mean, it's not heartening to hear of your struggles, but it is heartening to hear that we share a perspective in some of the ills of society that hopefully we can address if we're to grow. All right. Let's go to Laleen, or I'm so sorry, JC. Let's go to JC, and then I'd like to introduce our guests.
Oh, okay.
Mhm.
Um, not only in the actual creating of something other people can see, like a picture or a song or a building or a garden, whatever. What you had to say about fire and trust, and that one line of, in life, you get things and what counts is what you
Right.
give.
Mm-hmm.
That's all spiritual too.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found that the power of fire is an incredible power.
Mhm.
And when you, excuse me, when I give up things about myself or that are value to me, but I know are limiting me, and I put it in a fire and watch it to be destroyed, I am able to destroy that in myself.
Mm.
And when I pretend that I see a fire, it doesn't work.
Okay.
So the fire needs to be real, and you need to, when you're thinking about what you get in life and what you give,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes what you get, you didn't ask for, and you don't have to receive it. You can put it in the fire
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
and let go of it because you didn't ask for it. You were only 3.
Okay.
So that's why I had a good time with your sermon today.
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for that. And again, um, that's that's almost better than what I had to say, because I
It takes a village, Michael.
yeah, right, right, right.
It takes a village to give a sermon.
Maybe, yeah. No, but it's so true. When I was still coping with the death of my father, for instance, and finally, I had to I wrote a letter that was essentially forgiving him for dying, you know, and
Mm.
and the only way that you can deliver such a letter is to place it in the fire, which is what I did, and a- and I will say that there was a burden that had lifted from me when I went through that process, and so I do think, and this is something that JC and I actually talk about pretty frequently, is that there is power in ritual, that the act of like writing down something that you don't want, and burning it is that's real. There is a real power to that. So I agree with you, JC.
Ah.
I didn't know that.
No. So, I was thinking about this subject of, art in building art and building community. And something that Sunday Services had been talking about a lot is hearing from younger people, and so I've invited 2 Zoomers on. No, wait, that's confusing. 2 Gen Zs on.
Zoomers.
Yeah, because we're on Zoom right now. Who are both, Miss Tori Rose is practically a rock star in our Douglas County community. She's shaking her head no, but I don't see anybody with a Michael Wheeler decal on their car. Yeah.
Hey, make one. I'll put it on
We'll all
mine.
put that
Oh,
on.
okay.
Yeah.
And maybe one of the most driven songwriters I have met in my life, and that's not an exaggeration. The other is Mr. Jake Tranter, who is the president and director of Spider King Studios, a local film company that he essentially founded and runs, and they are wrapping up with a production that they did. So when it comes to talking about production and what goes into producing not only art but community, I thought that these 2 individuals were apt to talk about it. So maybe, Tori, we can go to you first. I sent you a question about when it comes to building community, from a youth perspective, as much as you can give one. Uh, do you have something that comes to mind that young people need? And if something does come to mind, is there an avenue that religious organizations or churches can help?
This was a super interesting question for me, at least. So I grew up in Oakland and I went to Oakland Church of Christ. My mom, for I think like 8 years ish, was my um, youth group leader. She was my teacher, and so I had a lot of support there naturally because she's my mom. But that community of that church was, and it could just be because we were from the small town of Oakland, but it was very tight knit and always knowing what was going on with everybody, which was cool and not cool at the same time. But I think that really helped me stay in line because everybody else knew what I was going to do before I even did it, it seemed like. But I too had my chance to teach at their vacation Bible school and a couple of their classes. And I think it was last month. Every month is the same month for me, but I think it was last month. I got to go back and help lead worship for my mom's class that she has right now, which I believe is like 5th and 6th grade. But it was really cool to not only go back and do that for these kids that I've never met before, but they were very excited about it. And my mom and I were talking afterwards. She said that never before have they been that excited to go and do worship and then do the rest of the class. They were very well behaved. I guess normally they're off the wall, I don't know. But I remember being that age. Sorry, there's a hair. And when we had a guest or somebody come into the class that was younger or not my mom specifically, it was exciting, and I did find myself more apt to like listen to them, aside from being like normally not wanting to listen to my mom to begin with. But I also feel like the rest of my class was also excited too. So it's kind of that, like, I don't know. You have like your regular teachers, which is really fun. But it's almost more engaging to have somebody every once in a while who is closer to your age because you feel like you can relate to them more.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
that was super helpful for me.
Yeah, that's an interesting response, because one of the things that the UU Church does, is that we don't have a seated minister, that we cycle through speakers. And it seems like that plays pretty well to the congregation. I'd like to go to Jake, if that's okay, and then open up for general discussion in the group. And anybody who has something to say, can either direct it towards me regarding the service. Carrie, we started on a really interesting conversation before we started the official meeting, or direct it to one of our two guests and what they have to say, would I think be good. Go ahead, Jake. Yeah, there you go.
Hi. Well, I personally have never been super involved in church growing up. So I haven't experienced that side of things too much, but I have pursued it as I've gotten older. Something that I have noticed, though, for the youth in Douglas County, Roseburg area, is that there's not a lot to participate in, just, as far as venues and things in general, but there's also a lack of purpose and just guidance in general. And I think a role that the church could play, a big role that the church should play, is just guidance and knowledge in general for the youth. And so creating something that I think would be a really good help and I've seen it before, is just creation of a venue or something that's not exactly included to members of the church only, but it's open to anybody of the community to get involved in. And I think that would incline youth more to go and pursue things that they haven't tried before, that are open, a welcoming environment, so that they can maybe learn a skill that can get them more in tune to a purpose that they can go after in life, or something along those lines. I think it would be a great help to get the youth more in tune with like more of a path in life, a direction, that sort of thing.
I think that lack of purpose might be one of the most dangerous things about our society. And I think it is a risk with the youth, but I see it in people in my generation and even a generation above me. So that, thank you both of you for the insight. And I see Glennis raising her hand, so let's go to her. Okay, so we'll have Glennis.
Did you say my name? You were garbled.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, cool.
Glennis, Glennis, then Martha.
Oh, okay. All right. Jake, I grew up here in Roseburg, and I am in my, I was a baby boomer. And our big thing was to cruise Harvard, and we'd go through Pete's, and then we'd go down around what used to be an A&W, and then back up into town, cross the bridge, and do the whole thing over again all night long. You want to talk about aimless and nothing much to do? I have to agree. The other thing I wanted to say too was, and by the way, Jake, what you are envisioning sounds awesome, and I wish we had something like that at the time that we were growing up, because we were saying the same darn thing in the exact same words you did. There's nothing to do here, and we were pretty aimless, actually. Come to think about it. The other thing is that, as some of you know, I've been playing bass for a number of years now on stage. And one particular person that I appreciate more than anybody else would be the roadie, the guy that hauls your crap in and hooks it all up and sounds it out, and you're fine. All you have to do is step on the stage. You got people lighting you. You've got people managing your sound, and by the time you start thinking about all these people that went into that little stage gig you had, when you consider who got you started into playing, who helped you along, who all of that, it's just always been kind of a conglomerate of energy moving forward. And
so wait, real quick, did you even have a roadie that tuned your bass?
Yeah.
Oh man.
I did.
Okay, never mind.
It was really short. It was really short. Mostly it was a roadie that would put it on the stage and I hook it up. But
nice.
No, there was a period of time where it was hooked up, tuned. The other one, I had a second one on the stage. It was tuned, everything ready.
Whenever that's so funny. Whenever I saw, okay, so Glennis is the real rock star here. I'm glad we fixed that. But whenever I saw Tori perform, it was always her dad like wrapping cables and moving stuff. So
Still does. He is our sound guy.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
And him and Scott have very specific ways they want the cables, and I will happily let them do that.
Right.
You betcha.
I remember after I offered to wrap cables, and he was like, no, no.
Yeah, they're very one way about it.
Take your music teacher butt and
They are really particular people too, so
right.
Just let them have it.
Right. Martha wanted to go, and then we'll have Carrie.
It's very interesting to see all the personalities and all the former life skills that are coming up in this conversation. Of course, coming from the oldie but goodie generation, I was born during World War II, so that's how old I am. And of course, growing up, we had all kinds of stuff through schools and churches and whatnot. But what I'd like to address is what you were talking about, Jake. It is true. I see the lack of purpose. I was in education for 42 years before I retired. And there's there's a lack of organization, things that I took for granted, that my kids took for granted, aren't those platforms or those organizations don't appear to be available to everybody unless you're part of an organized religious congregation. And there are religious education or religious congregations that are very successful in promoting growth in their churches. But then there are a lot of kids who have grown up in that and say, I don't want that. What I'd like to suggest is what Michael tried to do, and it was fairly successful until we had to shut down for COVID. We had open mic. I don't know whether Jake or Tori participated in our open mic at our building once a week, or was it once a month? I don't remember, Michael.
It was once a month,
you
and Jake is also a gifted singer and songwriter, so he did
okay,
a
so
couple of those.
that's one way. The
Yeah.
one thing that we're working on is a grant, the Chalice Lighter grant, so that we can do exactly what you're talking about, provide a venue
Mhm.
whereby we can have community members, young young people come and have a place that's safe, alcohol free, or, you don't have to go hang out in bars. And not to say there's anything wrong with going and hanging out in bars, but having something in a more free form, like you don't have to be there and, you don't feel like you're being hit on, or, those kinds of things. It's in a more like homey environment. I'm not quite sure that's the right word that would bring up to mind for a young person, but a safe environment that would be safe for people to meet somebody else and have somebody like Michael being there. I'm not quite sure what it all entails, but we are working on grants for those kinds of opportunities and venues. The other thing that our particular organization does have, but we don't have it now, there are curricula that we teach for young people in adolescence called Our Whole Lives, which talks about what happens to us as we get older, how to work with these changes, how to be aware of what's going on. There's all those things are missing in basic society. And that's one of the problems, where people don't even know what it is to be often. I'm not talking about our present company, but there are various children that don't have any role models. And that's what we would like to provide, are some role models.
Mhm.
So however but we're working on it. We're working on the funding.
Yeah.
And as soon as we open, we can start having some of those groups again, Michael.
Yeah, and thanks for that update. It's and it's good, I think, for the community to know that we have done our best to start the ball rolling, and and to give credit where credit is due. I was just going to say, if you go straight down the line, but now you have to go diagonally. Laleen has joined us, and she is really the one responsible for the grant writing that Martha was just talking about. So I think thank you to Laleen for that. Carrie wanted. Good. Okay. Sorry. You all moved on me, and so.
Well, it just once everybody moves.
Yeah.
Somebody new join, then you move.
Carrie wanted to go next.
Sure. Well, I mean, the first sense of community I had was definitely my family. I mean, I'm the youngest of four. So, and my oldest sister, she's 12 years older than I am. So, in my house, I mean, there was just constant movement, activity. There was all sorts of stuff going on. I'm sure I saw a lot of things that I shouldn't have at a young age because I had older siblings. Just as far as like movies, I probably shouldn't have and things like that. But what grounded our whole family was my mom, and she was like the truth teller. She would give guidance to all of us in the house. She wasn't someone who just gave into our wants. It was special occasions and stuff, but because she focused on our needs, she taught, at least for me, I learned that being part of a community, number one, you have to fulfill your own needs first. And that way you have something to contribute to a group. Mm-hmm. And I think that, in order to build the community, we have to put in time individually first so that we know what our strengths are and what we can bring to the table. But another thing that I learned from my family was that everybody has a job.
Hmm.
And if if you don't like your job, sometimes you just got to suck it up and you got to do it anyhow because it needs to be done. And other times you had to take on someone else's job, or like for instance, if I'm out of the house because I'm running errands, the boys have to mop or do laundry or something. And that for them is it's a life skill, but it's also, hey, we all need clean clothes. So if you want something clean to wear tomorrow, you're going to have to help with laundry. And so I think community, number one, can start at home. But that was at least my initial understanding of what it was to be part of something bigger than myself.
Mm-hmm.
And then of course the congregation, with everyone and all their life skills and what everyone brings to the table. I mean, that's why we're all doing the Zoom right now, is because everyone has something to contribute. So going in with an open heart, meeting new people and saying, hey, this is who I am. If I can accept myself wholeheartedly, I can accept other people wholeheartedly. And then you start opening the doors to what can we do together,
Wow. Nice. That makes me, I just saw JC's hand go up, but that makes me think of so much, because one of the things you said about, well, first off, I think people like me, right? People who are more traditionally minded can do a much better job of making it clear that all families, all family structures, and all family forms are valid, right?
Yes.
So
Amen.
yeah, but then you also talked about how everybody has a job, and sometimes that job is not the most enjoyable thing. We don't all get to be rock stars and musicians and famous filmmakers and and all of that. And it reminds me of a quote. I think it was Walter Williams, but I'm not sure. And forgive the language, everybody, because he was talking in the 1960s and 70s, but he was saying that a man who works a menial labor job in order to support and raise a family is doing a deeply noble thing for society. And so this idea of like, if work isn't fulfilling, but you're doing it in support of something that is going to benefit society, then that person ought to be honored. I could go on and on about about what you just had to say, Carrie, but but I want to give it to Laleen, and then maybe after, or JC, I'm so sorry. After that, we can have our guests chime in a little bit if nobody else wants to speak. Go ahead, JC.
Okay, well, I'm busting with two things. One is very quick. There is existing in the community, in the Blue Zone's work, an absolutely great how to find my purpose process. And Laleen and I were involved in a group of that. Strangely enough, we ended up knowing everybody but one person. And everybody but that one person was a therapist. And that one person had never heard of a therapist. And my God, we had to be careful how we tried to fix her. But she was a person looking for a purpose. And that made us look for a purpose. And the four of us who already thought we knew who we were learned a lot. So that already exists. We don't have to make that part up.
Okay.
And the other thing is, I speak to any songwriters. What we're doing as a country right now needs songs for protesters that present their point of view. That's not about cut it down, throw it out. It's about fill it up, bring it in, hold it, put my heart in it. And they need to be the kind of songs that can be sung by anybody walking while singing. And I mean, come on, people.
Okay.
I know those songs have come from other times,
Well,
and they last as the ones do you remember when we got together and sang this? We need those songs right now. That's
so
just my plea.
I think everybody should hop on to Facebook and listen to Tori's song "Tell Me Again," because I think that it goes as pretty far into protest and some of the conversations that we're having, about the safety of women in our society.
Right.
Yeah. Thank you, JC. So I would actually like, Tori, if you don't mind, I'd love for you to discuss that. But Jake, several people have addressed the point that you made. Would you mind responding to any of that? Right now you're muted. Yep.
Yeah, I'm right next to a road because the internet in my house is terrible. But anyway,
Gotcha. Well, thank you. Yeah.
Yeah. I think, a lot of people agree that, especially in the kind of town we live in, there's just not a whole lot, to be engaged in. And it's always something that we're thinking about, but it seems to be never something that actually gets improved or, correct me if I'm wrong. But so I think it would be good to look for different ways to get not only the youth, but just the community as a whole engaged more. Not just a church member exclusive event, but something like that, like the open mics. Those were fun. Not everyone is into music or performing, so there's always other things that we could look into doing. Like for me, example, I do film and video, and I think it would be really cool to put on some venues for people to get into that, and I would be happy to be included in that if that's something anybody's interested in doing. And I would also think it would be cool to see some youth getting interested in music and learning it from somebody who's younger, like Tori. Somebody, like she said, they can relate to more because they're more closer in age. And I think just having different sort of opportunities like that open up just to learn different skill sets that might be interested in, by the youth and things like that. So,
well, and I think one of your big inspirations for starting the company was your involvement in the community theater, right?
Yeah. I started with my theater in high school and middle school and things like that. But then I don't know if anybody's heard of them, but there's also a group called Up to Us Youth Media Projects, run by kind of the same people that do the Human Trafficking Task Force. And they put together PSAs, public service announcements, for the youth to come together and actually write out something that they think needs to be improved in the community, and then actually produce like 30-second videos to put out there on news stations and things like that. And it was a really fun thing to be a part of, and that's really what kind of sparked me for my film. But it allowed youth to come together and actually work on something that they thought would make a difference.
Interesting.
And I think it was a pretty strong way of doing it.
Cool. Yeah, thank you. Tori, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but since the topic of songs about, current issues or current problems, and you just recorded that Tell Me Again, is that okay? You can say no, but
Yeah.
I'd love it if you could talk about it.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Goodness. Well, if you guys do go and listen to it, it's a heavy song, and I'm singing about exactly what it sounds like I'm singing about. Essentially, and I'll just recite part of the chorus for you. But the chorus is, tell me again that it's my fault, that I was asking for it all, that my clothes were the reason that I can't stop this bleeding. Tell me again that it's my fault. And the whole song is basically, it's very sad. But I think that it also is very important. So when I shared that song, I could not believe the amount of women that I had reach out to me. I actually had a couple of guys reach out to me too and say that they could relate with that song, and it breaks my heart. But that's kind of one of the special things about songwriting, I think, is that you get to relate to people in ways that you never would have probably got to do otherwise. And especially with that subject, people don't walk around and say, hey, you know, I've been raped, or I've been sexually assaulted, or this or that. But even though they don't say that, I think we still wear it a lot too. And that song I don't think that there could be enough songs in the world that would open enough eyes to start changing things. But by golly, if that's how it's going to happen, I'll write 1 million of them, because it's very important, I think.
I think sometimes it doesn't take 1 million. Sometimes it just takes one. Sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah. I don't know if you saw, but you were getting some applause for what you just had to say. Something, you know, it was before you had joined the talk, Tori, but Carrie and I were discussing, you know, that sometimes you have to go to that well of pain, you know, in order to find what you have to say.
Yeah.
You know.
Yep.
And that was, you know, one thing that you would never want to do, you know, is like, is to hear somebody talking about trauma or pain and then say something, you know, I know how you feel because I go through trauma and pain too. And it's like, the truth is you never really know how somebody else feels because, you know, that's an individual thing. But I will say, you know, for writing the album that I just wrote, the lyrics were the hardest part. You know, the lyrics were absolutely the hardest part because I only had one story. I only had one thing to say, you know, and feeling like you're writing the same song like 18 times. It can be a challenge.
I agree.
Yeah. But seriously, thank you for sharing that. I'd like to put a link to the song, you know, in this. So yeah, okay. Very cool. I'll do that. I'll make sure to do that. JC.
The hard songs are completely appropriate right now because we didn't have anything to do with not being able to keep doing our old stuff that keeps reminding us that's who we are. We were shut down and shut away from each other. So a whole lot of people are feeling emotions they had nicely stuck over in this corner where they really didn't bother them anymore, but they've kind of snuck out to where they're right here in their faces. And I think that this is really the time for the hard songs for people to relate to, because it'll help them. Because we, you know, as I said before to other people, the things that I burned in the fire last Sunday are not calling me back. I don't feel them. And so I'm able to look at the new things and say, what different thing are you going to do now to be the person you believe I be the person I believe I am? Mm-hmm. And the songs are really helpful because you can think of them over and over until they make a meaning for me. Mm-hmm. So I encourage you. Tough stuff, find its way into, there's tough stuff music. Mm-hmm. I mean, even without lyrics, some of the
Yeah.
music just
Yeah.
takes you down, you know?
Yeah. Uh,
So,
yeah, I could, if I had another like 3 hours, I could list all of the music that. But no, JC, in Sikhism, there's a concept called overfilling the cup, and it's this idea of that if you're bogged down with sadness or then you listen to music that is sympathetic to those emotions. So if you're sad, you listen to sad music because there's an idea that you're overfilling the cup, that if your cup is full of sadness and you pour it in, then it'll spill
right,
out and you'll feel better. And and yeah, and I think that's certainly what came to mind when you were talking. Um, well, let's
speaking of which,
yeah.
in the paper this morning, there is a thing about Brinley the Brave. Brinley has a tumor on an eye nerve,
Hmm.
and it has been taken away by medicine.
Hmm.
And she has said she's tired. She loves people to come to send stuff to her, but she's tired of their good wishes. She wants jokes.
Oh,
She wants to laugh. And she says, some of the stuff is really stupid, but I laugh anyway. So, in case you have a joke or two you'd like to share, Brinley is waiting for you.
age appropriate humor.
I don't know. He's getting some really raw stuff.
Oh, okay. All right.
So
Never.
has been brother, you know,
Yeah.
that's kind of wonderful. Yes,
Yeah. Go.
sorry.
I just got a call from work. I have
Thank
to go
you.
in. We have
Thank
an
you so.
emergency.
Yeah. Thank you so
But
much
thank
for
you
your
all
time.
for having me. It was wonderful to meet you all, and I
Bye.
hope you have a wonderful day.
Take care, Tori.
Bye.
Bye bye.
Again,
Bye.
thank you, Tori.
Yeah. So let's maybe we can open this up to anybody else who has something to say. Yeah. Go for it, Kim.
I was just remembering that my pastor at my church is quitting his pastoringship at our church so that he can stay in Roseburg to pursue helping out youth people. And I don't know exactly what he's going to do, but that's what he's planning on doing.
Oh,
So
great.
I don't know what he thinks he's going to do, but he's going to do something.
Yeah. Well, I think I don't want to sound doomsdayish about our community. I think there's a lot in our community that we have to be proud of. But when it comes to the people who have fallen through the cracks, whether they be youth or not, I do believe that it's like an all hands on deck situation. That's just my personal feeling about it. Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yes.
Yeah. Thank you, Kim. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, sorry. I thought Paul was raising his hand.
No,
You got, yeah, I was
not
ready to
yet.
jump on it. No? Okay.
Well,
Well, oh,
I just wanted to say something, but it has nothing to do with what we've been talking about over the
that's
last
okay.
minutes. During your sermon, I don't know how I kind of connected into the fact that as a civilization, as a society, that we build on new ideas.
Hmm.
They come up and then they become established, and then they are replaced by newer ideas.
Mhm.
And as a civilization, this is how we grow, is by building on what's happened before. And I
Mhm.
kind of dwelled on that during the sermon. I thought that was
No,
recommend-
yeah, that's a very profound statement, because those new ideas that you're talking about are rooted in older ideas, and I think there's a reason why the quote, standing on the shoulders of giants, resonates so well with people, because for anybody who's involved in creative endeavors, there is always, or there should always be present in your mind, the sources that you're drawing from. They could be teachers, they could be inspirations, they could be, people whose stuff you're stealing, which is a lot of my album. So, um, so yeah, I think the same thing is true with community. It could be something as literal as putting a church in what used to be a, I don't know, like a Walmart, some of the mega churches, that's how they got their start, or it could be something figurative, like the American Constitution was heavily inspired by not only a Native American Constitution but English common law, and the synthesis of those two things created
Collaborative.
something, yeah, created something absolutely new that the world, many of the parts of the world are trying to emulate, so good thoughts. Sharon.
Uh, I've been thinking a lot about Jake's idea and understanding that Laline is writing a grant to make such an idea come to fruition. What we've talked about, or what I've heard, is a lot about music and video production. There are other skills that young people need because not all of them are interested in those pursuits. For instance, somebody might need to know how to use a screwdriver. I was thinking when you were talking, Michael, is that as a girl, I learned to do that because my father wanted help.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I found out when I went to college, my girlfriends at college didn't know how to hold a hammer or what you do with pliers. And more recently, my adult girlfriends don't know those skills either. Now, here in Roseburg, traditionally, those kinds of opportunities were taught in the school. But those might not be acceptable to some of our youth because they need it maybe younger.
Mm-hmm.
And to borrow your idea, Michael, there's so many absent fathers.
Hmm.
So I really like Jake's idea, and I hope that whatever the grants are will address some of those areas too.
Yeah.
One thing that I think is really missing in our modern young women is doing handwork.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's very important for the dexterity of their fingers. And if they're not interested in music, they have to have something.
Mm-hmm.
And, for guys too. Who was it? Rosie Gear,
Yeah.
the football player that knit it.
Oh, right. Yeah. Well, no, and your point is well taken, Sharon. I think there is a renewed validation in vocational training, which I think is partially economically driven, but I think it's good for us nonetheless. And I will say I can build a bookshelf. I can put together furniture. I put together all of my exercise equipment. So I'm not a completely inept
Of course you're
person.
not.
You can thank a teacher for that because you can follow directions.
Yeah. Actually, it was my father. I remember the first computer that we got, and he put it together, and I asked him, how did you do that without knowing anything about computers? He's like, I read the manual. So.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah.
So yay for English.
Yeah, right.
Or sometimes it's Finnish or Japanese. You never know.
And it's also it's also algebra, right? Because order of operations.
Yes.
Order of
Exactly.
operations is important. So.
But then Laline did a familiar thing the other day. She smiled at me as she was reading the manual and said, I finally decided to read the instructions.
Yeah.
Right. We do try.
Right. Well, as men, we get the, that we never want to ask for directions to places. So,
Yes.
so that's our stereotype.
Why is that?
I don't know.
Male
Male
pride.
psyche.
Yeah. Male pride, is that what you said?
Drag something out and chance being wrong when you could just ask for help and it
Right.
could be done almost
No,
within
okay, so when I was in India, it was culturally just very common when you're in a taxi for taxi drivers to drive up and say, where is, such and such, because the address system just isn't, when you've got that many people, the address system just tends to fall apart. And so, I think part of it is certainly cultural. But I will say, if we're talking about like, perhaps male ways that men can be better. One of the stereotypes is that men don't like to talk about their feelings. And actually that's not true. Men will talk about their feelings, but here's the caveat. Men have to believe in the efficacy of talking about feelings. They have to believe that it will accomplish something. If talking about their feelings won't accomplish anything, then what's the point? And so I think the same thing with like asking directions. It's like it's okay to show that you don't know something as long as there's a point to showing that you don't know something.
But sometimes
point.
that one doesn't have the knowledge of why they want to be talking about their feelings until they get into their feelings and then go, aha.
And yes.
That's that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Which is why I believe that we can do a better job with men of teaching them the value of of talking through problems, for instance. The value of seeing a counselor. I don't want to make this all about me, but I was on the phone on Zoom with my counselor on Friday. And I was talking about some of my theological beliefs, and I said, I don't necessarily, as a religious person, I don't necessarily believe that God wants me to be happy, or God wants us to be happy. And he said, that's a very dark outlook to say that God wants you to be unhappy. And I said, hang on, that is not what I said. What I said is God does not want us to be happy. That's not the same thing as God wants us to be unhappy. And he said, what's that?
I said, good job, Michael.
Oh, thank you. and he says to me, do you always rationalize everything? And I said, yes. These are complex issues, and they deserve complex responses. So anyway,
oh, you must be a joy to treat.
Oh yeah. Ray of sunshine. I see, JC.
Last night we watched the movie about Gandhi.
Mm.
And at the end, when he indeed had, the English were leaving and had left, and then the Hindus and the other guys started killing each other.
That's right.
And Gandhi quit eating. And when he was really, really almost dead, they said, well, what is it that you want? And he said, I want them to not fight and to promise never again to fight.
Sounds
and
like
I thought, oh, that's telling it like it is. And they went out and they came up and they said, we promise, because he was putting his life on their line. Now, to me, that's purpose. He only knew what he had to deal with. And he did it. He didn't want to be alive and see all that fighting.
Right.
And that took them to a whole other place. All away from their rationalizations, all the way from whose God is right, all that. And it was powerful to watch.
Yeah.
So there's always Gandhi to be your one in the corner saying, this is how you do this.
His quote, be the change you want to see in the world.
Absolutely.
I don't think we would regard that that statement in the same way if it hadn't come from somebody like Gandhi.
Yeah.
He had
only one thing. And he stuck to that one thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
But it was the one thing that everybody else had to do.
Yeah.
It was really interesting.
Well, and that if you're passionate and consistent, you can change the world. It's an amazing. It's almost the depth of that concept would almost break my mind. If you were to explore it to its natural ends. This is I have to say I woke up today not feeling so great, but I've thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. We have only like a few minutes left. Does anybody have anything to say? No? Hearing nothing?
I loved what you said about Gandhi, and I think that there's so much truth to that. I mean, if you believe so wholeheartedly in that purpose, you're bound to make headway in some way, shape, or form. And even if you don't reach what your ultimate goal is, you're leading by example for so many other people, everyone else in your life, so that they can latch on to whatever their purpose is and say, hey, that person inspired me. I can do this myself. And for everyone it's going to be different, but just being able to see an iconic figure like that, and bring them to our group. I mean, that's enough for me. I don't know if you guys heard me, but I honestly feel like I have to say that to my kids, like.
Oh, we heard. Yeah, we heard you. No, but that.
It is true. I mean, I tell them the same thing. Like, I just want you guys to not fight. Yep. I don't care how you do it. I don't care how you got to solve your problem. You can sit on the couch until you guys like calm down enough to talk to each other, and so I put the ball in their court. But by God, at the end of the day, they know that they're not going to get off the couch until they've figured out their issue and until there's peace. So
blessed are the peacemakers, Carrie. Well, that was wonderful. An enormous thank you to our guests, Jake Tranter from Spider King Studios and Tori Rose from Tori Rose Music. If you get a chance, please visit. I will include links. And I hope you have a blessed Sunday, and thank you so much for being here.
Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Michael. Bye.
Carrie, good to meet you, Erica.